Hi team, welcome to the Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast. My name is James McFetrich and this is an ongoing toolkit for all healthcare staff. Whether you are a porter or a paediatrician, a domestic or a driver, clinical or non-clinical, just starting or just finishing your work in healthcare, this podcast aims to give you some useful thoughts about working for this amazing business to get you through your day. Before we start today's episode, I'll be so grateful if you could do one thing for me. If there is anything in these episodes that helps you in your day-to-day work as a healthcare worker, please tell your friends and colleagues so they can benefit from it too. I'd be so grateful if you could do that to really help grow this podcast. Thank you. Today we're going to talk about connection, and this comes from a suggestion from a former colleague of mine, Rachel Healy. I worked with her as a sister, then she was a ward manager, and then she became a matron. And thank you so much, Rachel, for suggesting this really nice idea. If you want to comment on any episodes, please do so on any of the socials that I post on. I'm on Facebook, X or Twitter, whatever we're meant to be calling it, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn. If you search for JMac Education, or you can email directly to the podcast at hellokccpodcast@gmail.com. Please contact me. I'd love to know your thoughts about the podcast. And if you, like Rachel, want to give me any suggestions for topics for me to talk about, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So today is connection. And you'd think working in healthcare, we should all have that same connection. We're working for a common good, a common goal of the patient or patients, groups of patients in front of us. But we know it doesn't always work like that, does it? It's so easy to hunker down into our little silos, our groups of people that we work with, whether it's our specific department, our specialty, maybe a bit bigger, it's the silo of our hospital. And that's important, I guess, in many ways. It's great to have that sense of belonging on a scale that we can see and understand. But it's also easy to lose sense of that bigger picture of patients that aren't just in our department, but are in a department that's affiliated next door, that is also feeling pressures or having difficulties. And clearly, outside of an individual hospital, there may be regional issues, national, international issues. And the danger is if we forget about the connection that we all have with all trying to manage people in healthcare, that we then become quite tribal. And that can clearly create friction and even animosity between departments or between individuals. And you'll have seen that yourselves, and I've seen that so many times. We think if a new hospital is built, neighbouring hospitals complain that they're not getting that same investment, or conversely, they fear that work is being taken away from them. I used to work in a emergency department that was split across two different sites. So there's that geographical split, only 8 miles apart. But there was always that sense that one group of staff was complaining that the other site would get more staff or fewer patients or more investment. And that's so natural, isn't it, to have that barrier put up rather than accepting that things are always going to be different depending on where we are working and how we perceive that. And it can get down to that very individual level as well. If, as a clinician, you're referring a patient to somebody else and then you get shouted at because you know that you're increasing the workload of a colleague and you're just trying to do your job and the right thing for the patient, and maybe that colleague is just expressing their frustration about their workload and their ability to manage it. But it does mean that we forget that we're all in this together. And also, I think it leads to that sort of false thinking that if we didn't have those issues, we'd be able to do our job perfectly if it wasn't just for everyone else interfering. But all our work connects with other people, with other departments, other areas of healthcare. And we need to acknowledge that rather than feel that there should be someone or something that we can blame or point the finger at. And it just feels too easy to do that. I feel this clearly links to the first aspect of this podcast. It's all about kindness. If we just remember to be kind to each other, that's a pretty good starting point. And hopefully that will lead to appreciating other people's viewpoints and their workload. And then we can understand that connection between us. To me, it very much brings to mind the poem that did the rounds in 2020 when we're in the midst of the pandemic. And the title of it, or how it's often referred to, is "We are in different boats but the same storm." I did look to see if I could find the author of that person, but I can't. I'll put a link in the show notes to a nice page that shows it quite nicely on the internet from the Institute of Sisters of Mercy of Australia and Papua New Guinea. And that sense, and I know you can interpret this poem in different ways, but I would certainly see it in the context of healthcare and that connection that I'm talking about, that we are all in the same storm because we are all trying to manage to do the best that we can in healthcare with those ever-expanding pressures that are put upon us, with those financial restraints, with the expectations that we put upon ourselves and clearly the expectations of the patients in front of us. But we have got that common goal of trying to do the best that we can. And yes, we are in different boats. We do have other smaller concerns because of our boats and our immediate environment that are important to us. And we need to acknowledge that that's the same for everybody. We don't want to forget those, acknowledge that we have our different problems and respect that. But use the connection that we have because we're all in this together to increase how we work together and our understanding of each other in our different departments. And that will only improve our ability to work together. And the better we do that, then clearly the better our work will be for the patients in front of us. Thank you for listening today. Let me know what you thought about this episode. I am on @JMacEducation on all the socials, and there are links in the show notes for anything that we've talked about today that may be of interest or further reading for you. I'd be really grateful if you could rate, review and subscribe, and most importantly, if you found this helpful, please tell your colleagues about this podcast. So please take care of yourselves out there. You are doing a great job, and remember, be kind, be curious, and don't forget your comfortable shoes. Thank you to Shakina Studio for the music, downloaded through Audio Jungle. Thank you to Beth for the artwork and the photo, produced through Canva, and thank you to Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast. The Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast is a JMac Education production.